Hi all, I had another very interesting game with FIDE master Robert Eames last night, and again with the black pieces. So would I fare better last night? Let's see what happened. E4, so this was played in a different league to before. This was in the Middlesex league, so I was playing for Muswell Hill on board 2 against the mighty Hackney team, who featured an IM Ansel on board 1. Tom Villiers was on board 1, I was on board 2. It was an 8-board match. I didn't want to play Khan particularly. Again, I played knight c6, a bit of a surprise weapon, and we transpose into a kind of Scotch game here. So here's a transposition to a Scotch game. Yeah, this does take the fun out of the e5. The tango with d5 would be fun to play. You could try and make use of the dark squares later, but this is the fun killer, unfortunately. But the Scotch game's not so bad to play with black. It's not meant to be massively brilliant for white. Bishop c5. The main move is actually bishop e3 here, it seems, according to live book. Knight takes c6 is the second most popular, and this is the third most popular. I put my bishop on b6. That's supposed to be the move. Knight c3, and it seems, yes, white's got a comfortable position here. That d5 square looks in particular quite comfortable. And I was a bit concerned about this pin because my bishop's over here. I didn't want to play knight f6, but looking on live book now, it seems knight f6 is actually the top move, and it's not meant to be a problem. Let's have a quick look at some games. They've been going like this with the quick h6, and here g5. Yes, this looks a bit outrageous, but maybe black's perfectly okay. Maybe I think the intention must be to castle queenside. So here, and black castling queenside. So that's a very interesting way of playing it. So the bishop pin is not such a big deal if you're castling queenside. And this is only slightly better for white on engine view. So anyway, so it seems knight f6 is plausible here. d6, queen f6, and knight ge7, what I played, have all been played before as well. This is meant to be okay as well. And castle kingside, so not as adventurous. But I have this passivity in the centre. I thought d6, I thought d5 was too risky. I played f5. If we consider, I thought d5 was too risky, just going into white's castling queenside. And this pawn's just too weak, surely. Knight b5, it doesn't look too good for this pawn. It's dropping off, in fact. So I didn't want to do that, so I thought, hold on a sec, the f pawn, because I could try and capture the e5 square, have a secure knight on e5 without interruption. So this was the plan. And if white now takes on f5, knight takes f5, I think this is okay. It seems, as though black's got some good piece activity. So yeah, he let me play actually for f4. Curiously, the engine preference is f takes e. I'm not sure about this, but apparently, it's okay. It doesn't look, pardon me, it doesn't look as positional as one I played, just to try and secure a knight on e5. But apparently, black's okay. That f file here looks interesting. Is it too dangerous to take here? Maybe white's getting an initiative here, a dangerous initiative against my king. That's another thing. It's more open. The centre is more open, so my king's probably more exposed in some variations. But anyway, so yeah, it sort of keeps it closed and positional the way I've played it here to play for f4, and I thought this was quite comfortable. So we have bishop takes, a takes, h4, very attacking, d6, h5, and I didn't want to weaken my light squares with h6. I actually thought h6, maybe g5 and knight g6, just cementing my dark square control. So yeah, I welcomed it. I played knight e5, welcoming the possibility of h6. I'm not entirely sure, though. I mean, g5 looks a little bit risky. Maybe white's better here, but it's got some things going for it, I think, this position. This position here looks like a good blockade position, even though technically white might be better. Okay, so anyway, we have an odd continuation though, a very odd continuation with rook h4. So saying to me, make use of this unprotected piece. So there are various ways of trying to make use of the unprotected piece. We could just go through some of these. Knight f5, I don't think works particularly well because the rook takes f4. Knight g6 is another way. Maybe the rook just retreats and then the knight goes back, and then okay, white gets another move. So he's got rook h2 for nothing. Now knight c6 hitting the rook like this might be actually quite interesting. This position here could be fun with f3. I didn't really look at this in depth, but this position here, it's at first it looks as though maybe white's using the g file, but the bishop is hemmed in at the moment. So if we look at this position a bit more carefully, here, say queen e3 for bishop e2. Maybe black's okay, because it seems as though black's got some pressure on this side of the board, forgetting about the king over here. Maybe something like queen h4 demonstrates that black might be interested in playing on this side of the board. I mean that's a weak pawn there. This kind of thing, is it too risky? Well, it has some risk and it would be a fun game. Maybe this is what my opponent was trying to encourage, what Robert was trying to encourage, Robert Eames. So yeah, that g file could be dangerous for black in the future. And of course there's a more spectacular looking attack on the rook which I used, but before going into that, which was actually knight d5, before going into that, it seems one of the more aggressive ways to play this is aim for an exchange sack here to celebrate this rook on a2. Quite a simple logic behind it, to try and make use of this rook on the a file to play f3, for example taking with the rook, as though rook takes c3 and then a2. So say this position, it seems as though this might be playable even as an exchange sack. This for example knight d5 here hitting the rook, and it's like chaotic. So queen d2, it gets messy, but maybe black's okay here. These are kind of weakened pawns, fragmented pawns. So yeah, there's a lot of complexity with this continuation after rook takes f3, because otherwise knight takes f3, rook going back, that g file is liable to be used at some point if black's not very careful here. Something like bishop h3, you can see that this could really backfire on black one day. So yeah, I played the more amazing looking move just to try and use this. So knight d5, it looks a bit outrageous because it's 1, 2, 3 pieces are on d5, so I'm hitting the rook but I'm protecting f4. Knight takes d5, queen takes h4, but my centre's crumbling here a bit. Knight takes c7, hitting the rook, and d6. So quite a lot of pawns potentially. And here, yeah, maybe technically the best move might be to take on a2 immediately here. This might actually be technically the best move. It's starting to look really quite dangerous for me on the queen side, and these knights have got a lot of things going for them. But this position, I'm actually hitting e4 here, which isn't. It's only protected by the queen. So say here, this is a bit of a murky position because the knights are so good and the structure is so wrecked. It's actually, I think, quite difficult to evaluate these types of positions. But actually, I mean, from an engine perspective, it thinks that black is better with knight c4 here. So I guess this was the way to play it. But yeah, what is actually going on here? I mean, can I double up rooks one day? Is it going to be useful? The knight protecting a1. b5 and then work on things slowly. Yes, it looks quite promising, but you know, white's got other options here. It doesn't have to play knight d5, can leave that knight there protecting a8. So say queen d2, and yeah, it's just a difficult position to play. In fact, you know, something like bishop b5, just getting rid of the light square bishop potentially. This leaves white in a very comfortable position in some variations, a bit like the game, because it seems the light squares are already weakened for black. I've got pawns on dark squares, so that is a kind of strategic exchange to get rid of the light square bishops here, and my structure isn't so stable at all. So if we look at the game continuation, I actually inserted f3, and it actually in some ways makes the variations like that a lot worse, because the e4 pawn is protected now. I had a certain idea, certain logic to this, that I was going to sort of get h5 and f3 maybe later, but it didn't pan out. Rook takes a2, now with tempo king b1, and there's not too many places for the rook. If I go to a7, I thought actually something like knight b5 might be good for knight takes d6. But yeah, I mean, there might be some resources here, some counterplay. It's not entirely clear cut for white. Now, but maybe instead of knight b5, maybe there's better ideas here. So because the knight's actually controlling not just a8 here for doubling the rooks, but the e6 square. So say queen b5. That's another. It seems a promising move here. Queen b5. So say taking this check. I mean, it's very, very chaotic position, but you see my structure is just reduced to rubble here. I think white is actually now better, even though is the exchange down. It's very dangerous. Look at this position. Everything's like really fragmented. So that doesn't look too good for black. So let's go back. So I played rook a4. And unfortunately, yeah, the rook's not really hitting anything, and it's subject to tempo gain. Queen b5. I thought, well, okay, I've got bishop d7 here. But then, of course, there's the check, which is annoying. And now, yeah, I think I'm actually just worse in this position. I played knight f7, and white has just a very powerful move strategically. I'm already weakened on the light squares, as I mentioned before. White just plays bishop b5, and I think I'm just worse here, even though I'm the exchange up. You might not believe that, but I mean, the rook is kind of nearly stranded here. If I didn't play knight f7, I mean, this didn't look too appetizing at all. Queen takes d6, hitting the rook and the knight. So if queen f6, something like this, takes, it doesn't look at all appetizing, this structure. It's just a total wreck, the structure. So yeah, it looks like you know, in a way, rook h4 was like a brilliant exchange sacrifice, tempting me for knight d5, when in fact I should be searching for my own exchange sacrifices. It seems this sort of stuff is really looking fantastic for white here. You can just nab another pawn maybe, and has got more than enough compensation for being the exchange down. Say something like knight takes f3, well, on the rook. There's always these tempo gains on the rook. So say taking here, this is just horrendous, isn't it? This pawn's now dangerous. There's certainly there's enough for white for an advantage there, a significant one. So let's go back. After this queen d5, I play knight f7. We have bishop b5. It's a very, very powerful move in this position, bishop b5. Something else, say bishop c4, I mean, to potentially pin. Then I've actually got some tricks here after bishop c4. Maybe this little trick to pin here might be useful, because there's queen d8 on the cards. So yeah, there's some little tricks. So bishop b5 avoids all the tricks, it seems. And just white's actually just fantastically strong on the light squares here, and my structure is a wreck here. Rook a7, winning another pawn. So now it's 2 pawns for the exchange. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, and my pawns look quite weak. Only move rook a4, queen b5. I was actually hoping for a repetition because I didn't see what I was doing otherwise. But in this final position after rook a7, yes, there was a repetition. But white's actually technically a lot better. I mean, nearly 2 pawns up, virtually according to engine view. Yeah, it's just a position which is really strong for white here. Knight d4, for example, threatens this, and also there's h6 on the cards at the right moment, and this is just a very, very difficult position to play, but he was getting a bit shorter on time than me, thinking about to repeat or not here, so this doesn't seem like a pleasant position at all for black. Let's see, I mean, let's give an example. Queen takes f2, b3, right here, h6. I mean, white's getting this attack. Queen b4, hitting the structure. Yeah, it doesn't look too good at all, this position. Where is my rook going? And I can start getting into big trouble here. It could start collapsing quite easily, and it's just terrible. Yeah, it is liable to complete collapse, this position. So I was actually very glad I was kind of let off the hook then with this repetition, queen b6. So yeah, I've got nothing else to do here apart from move the rook. But yeah, if white wants to play for a win, it seems the position is quite good with knight d4 in particular to make use of this otherwise passive knight. And white can afford that because this knight's controlling a8. I'm not going to double on a1. So knight d4 seems to be a very, very powerful idea. You know, with follow-ups like knight queen b4 and stuff, it looks very, very dangerous. Okay, yeah, so a bit of a scrappy game. Just in retrospect, after I've without checking, from the engine view, I actually thought I'd missed something here more simple last night without checking on the computer, with just the idea here of playing g5. I was convinced that maybe I should have played g5 because I felt I had the advantage on this side of the board. But this kind of position isn't so clear cut if white's going to use that g file later. If any time, or the h file, if I play something like this, I'm neglecting c7 potentially. So say f3, I think white's looking for knight d5 here. I mean, just as an example, here, I think, well, white does look comfortable here in any case. Let's give white a few moves. If in this sort of position, it looks as though I've got the worst of it here. This structure is a bit fixed, and in fact, white's got a big positional advantage brewing up now, potentially working his way on this weakened pawn. I'm not entirely sure now this is greater as I imagined it would have been without checking. I mean, it's the concrete details of the position that I'm not really doing anything on this side of the board if it's locked up, and potentially this is a long-term target now, this h7 pawn. So yeah, there was that kind of regret there without checking, but then later, it turns out f3 might be a great way of in effect coordinating the rooks against the king. If I've got an exchange sack on the cards, if white had played queen d2 here, yeah, this gets very interesting. I mean, this is an interesting play. So yeah, it was a very, very interesting game with this rook h4, this virtual exchange sack, which did seem to lead to an advantageous position for white, especially the way I played it. So the most accurate way of playing it was not actually f3, it turns out. I've got to keep e4 to be attacked after rook a4 to hit e4. I didn't do that. I think rook takes a2 is probably the best chance here. So this kind of continuation is like an upgrade on before, because you see that e4 is more vulnerable. So bishop b5 taking. See here, queen takes b5. You see it's an upgrade because I've got rook takes e4 as opposed to the game continuation. In which case, yeah, this is much this is actually better for black. You know, I've got a lot of stuff going on here. I can take on f2 even. So yeah, it was a very interesting game again, a very tactical skirmish. Yeah, very strong player. I was happy with a draw, to be honest, but the team got thrashed. It was a very, very strong Hackney side. We got thrashed 6.5, 1.5. So yeah, I think this Middlesex League Division 1, Muswell Hill's suffering a bit. If you're a very strong over the ball player in Muswell Hill, please let us know. I think we really need some players, ideally above 180 ECF, to try and help the team. Okay, comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.